Alright, I'm Demi. Welcome to my first video tutorial. For this, I'm using mudBox 2014. Probably do about 30 minutes, 40 minutes of basic sculpting just to give you some tips and hopefully help you on your way. So firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my basic grab tool, and I'm going to draw the face out into the shape that I want it roughly. The topology, I believe they call it. Don't know all the scientific terms for it. I mean, shit. Anyway, to the point, as you said, we'll drag the head out. I'm gonna go for some kind of extraterrestrial, maybe add a little bit of biomechanic, kind of Geigerish, something or other to it of some sort, to try and show you a bit of hard surface modeling and a bit of skin, maybe do a bit of bone or something as well. But yeah, just try and give you a basic rundown on some sculpting tools and tips, and how I use mudBox. Hope the music's alright, just some instrumentals, nothing special. Anyway, so now I'm going to my basic sculpt tool, and I'm not using any stamp on this, it's just the standard circle. Okay, but before I start applying all that, I'm going to subdivide once, so I'm at 8,000 polygons. You'll probably find that you can't sculpt a whole lot at the standard 2,000 polygons of the base model that I'm using, which is the standard mudBox head. Now, you'll notice that as I'm stroking, it's not applying a lot of clay. That's because I have my strength set at a very low height all of the time for most of my tools. I find it's easier to make subtle lines and apply more than it is to add more and subtract away. So we're just going to build up a little bit of the facial bone structure to start with. I'm not totally sure what exactly this thing's going to look like, but I got some pretty neat ideas I'm going to try and put in here, and at the same time show you something cool. So we get a bit more of this facial structure in, and the body and shoulders, obviously. Now, having a basic knowledge of biology, human biology or animal biology, whichever, does help. But to be honest, as far as I'm concerned, there are no rules, and nothing you need to worry about in art too much. I don't think it matters too much if it doesn't look perfect at the start. Now I'm going to put a bit more mass in on the deltoid trap area here for a second. At first he might look a little bit angular, as you can see on that part. But I'm going to go back to my grab tool, and I'm going to make a nice big brush. Now I've got X symmetry turned on. Each tool has on the right side, there's a drop down with the mirror bar. It's important to remember later in the build, when you're adding asymmetrical details or whatnot, toggle that on and off, and remember where you've worked in symmetry, because if you make something a major change to, say, one eye, and then go to work back in that similar area with symmetry, it will glitch out and affect both sides. So it's important to remember your symmetry tool, whether it's on or off. Now, back to my basic sculpting tool. As you can see, I've just broadened that out a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to add a little bit of a line across here, and this will eventually become his collarbone style thing. Not too sure if this model will have traditional collarbone or makeup in that area yet. Haven't got there. Now I'm going to make a slightly bigger brush, and I'm going to start building in a bit of the mass that I'm going to use for his over-exaggerated spinal cord. I'm gonna over exaggerate the spine a bit so I can show you a bit easier how to make one. Some people who don't know me probably wonder why I only ever make monsters and so forth. Yeah, that's what I do, okay? I don't really get into theories and the like. Well, I guess that depends on who you ask. There's a few people that might say that I've been in a few theories, but I think that's irrelevant to this tutorial. So let's get back to the spinal cord here. As you can see, it's starting to get quite extruded from his back, which is going to be ideal eventually for what I want. Now I'm using, I'm not actually holding the brush down, I'm actually clicking multiple times, okay? That's something I'm clicking at each end of the stroke. Now because I've got the geometry set so low at the moment, the polygon count, it's going to be a bit rough and jagged. Now I tend to actually use this in my favor a little bit, because when you divide it will smooth that out and it'll give it a slightly more curved and organic look. As you can see, we've got a bit of a ridge here now, bit of shoulder construction. I'm going to divide again, okay? And you'll see what I mean. It smooths it right out and takes away that jagged edge. Now I'm going to use my grab tool and I'm just going to adjust some of this a bit because I'm not totally happy with the way it's sitting. The line isn't quite right. As you can see, it doesn't really matter what you actually build. Like, I'm not expecting you to build exactly what I'm building at any time, but there's this great thing, it's called Control-Z. So it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. Feel free to play with the tools. I refer to them quite often as my toys because you never know quite what effect you're going to get if you tinker with it a little bit. You can use so many of the tools for so many different parts. As you can see, we've put a bit more mass around the spinal cord now, and then I'm going to come around to the front here, and I'm going to build this cranial line a little bit. Now, as you can see, using a standard brush without any stamp texture, alpha texture on it, and just stroking in soft curves along the angle you want, gives you a really natural sinewy look, almost like muscle strands, which when you're just learning to sculpt, it's really handy because mudBox makes it so easy to get that organic look. I use ZBrush and Sculptress, all sorts of programs. I actually think that they're best used in conjunction with each other. I quite often send my gear back and forth using the gauze thing that they provide. Now I'm going to hold Control to invert my brush, and I'm going to take away a bit more of this eye socket area. Okay. I will eventually put some eyes in there. Very shortly, actually, I'll probably do that, but I'll come back to that in a second. I'll just get a bit more of the socket there so I know what I'm dealing with for the rest of the facial structure. Now, something you have to remember when you're making the face, okay, is the position you're going to want the face in. As you can see, just by using, like I said, those small, delicate strokes, and you can create a quite natural looking sinew muscle composure for the upper face area here. You can also use your Control to subtract a little bit of that out, and it won't take away from that sinewy effect, but it'll take away from the overall mass of the area. So let's build a bit more up on his jaw here. As you can see, I've been stroking in the angle that I want the muscle to have that appearance of flowing, and it's funny how a simple thing like that can change a model completely. If you, for example, were trying to make the sinew that runs down his neck here, and you were stroking across it like this, it would never quite look right. That's my personal opinion. Something about sculpting I've learned in the brief time that I've been doing it is that everybody's different and they have different techniques. Some of the things that I do might not suit you. Some of the things that you do I might not like. But to be honest, it's your prerogative how you do it, and vice versa. So yeah, as you can see, we built a bit more jaw in here. Okay, and we got this neck part. I'm gonna take a little bit of this away and create a bit of a pit. Excuse me, sorry about that. And I'll put a little bit of a bulge in here, which obviously I believe would be some means of voice box or Adam's apple, so to speak, larynx, I believe they call it. Holy shit, do I know something? Oh my god, that would be funny. Imagine that, Demi actually knowing something. Now I'm going to use my inverted brush, and I'm going to take a bit of this out in here and create a bit of a bone structure for his shoulder itself. Now as you can see, I'm following the two lines that I've created, this one and this one, and with my inverted stroke. I'm not so much following this neck column, because what will happen is it creates that, and it gives that natural curve in here, which will come into play a little bit later. Now, still using the standard brush, I'm going to create the shoulder trap sinew so you can see this process. Now, I don't personally use very many perfectly straight strokes. Okay, I like to add a bit of curve in there to flow with the body shape, which is, I believe, semi-common sense. It adds that, like I said, muscle sinewy flow, an organic feel to skin. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit dimply and it's not really doing much. That's a good sign that the detail that I'm trying to put in is too much for your poly count. It's sometimes if you're working in an area like that and it's not doing it because of your detail, you just cut and continue to apply it. But what I'm gonna do is instead of just applying that straight away, subdividing and so forth, I'm going to work on some other areas to add detail into the places where the detail is not. As an example, the top of his head and the chest area here. Now I'm probably going to end up dragging that down a bit more. I think I'll do that now because I want a bit more chest in there. Now using the big brush, you see it affects the whole model. It will affect anything within that ring, which is pretty common sense, I think. But you end up dragging your collarbone out of shape if you don't freeze. Some people use the freeze tool and masking a lot. I generally just change my brush size. But in this case, I actually wanted that to get dragged down a little bit. Just a tad, because it creates a bit more of the illusion that I'm looking for. Now this bust is, like I said, just a very quick, very brief rundown on some of the tricks that I have and use for sculpting. I'm not expecting to teach advanced sculptors much, so if you do know what you're doing, please do not bother writing some crap ass comment about how far your head is up your own rectum on my YouTube. Okay, find a mirror and talk to someone who gives 10 cents, because I honestly don't. This is for people that are trying to learn from the start. As you can see now, I'm going to pull out a bit of this ear. Okay, now I'll show you a nice easy way to make an ear without needing to use any advanced freezing, masking, or anything like that. It's just a very simple, easy way to create an ear. As you can see, I have a humanish ear. I mean, might be a little bit on the flappy Dumbo side, but it's, yeah, no, we're gonna pull this out a bit more. Now, it doesn't matter what shape your ear is. Most ears have a very similar biological construction. Now, I'm just using my smooth tool on that a little bit. Now, with your smooth, I have my smooth set to a very low strength because, as an example, if you spend a lot of time on creating an area of detail and then you run over that with the smooth and it's too strong, it will wipe it out completely, and it's basically you sculpting yourself in loops. So I have it on a very low level of strength. Now we've got this basic ear shape, so I'm going to subdivide for this. So I've gone up to 128,000 polys. I'm using my standard brush still, and I'm just holding the control key and I'm just carving into that flab that I created, that little ear piece. And as you can see, it's almost doing the work for me. I'm hardly having to do any major craft just yet. I'm going to use my standard on its normal polarity so that it's adding, and I'm going to add a little bit of a ridge along the back of the ear here, and then I'm going to invert and I'm going to suck away from the middle, okay, like so. As you can see, we're halfway there. Now, using that same standard brush, I'm just going to turn the size down, right, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take a bit more out, nice and tight in here, not too much, just a little bit, because the other thing you want to remember is that once you've finished sculpting it and you can add texture over top, so you don't have to build all of the detail into the model. In fact, depending on what program you're intending to use your models on, if any, some people, like I personally, enjoy sculpting for the art of it as much as I do for other programs. And we're just gonna add a little bit to those tips, but some programs have limits on the weight of the model that you can use. If you're sculpting to make a model to animate for a short movie in 3ds Max or Maya, you might not have to worry about it depending on your computer. Now I'm using my grab tool here, and I've got quite a big circle set, okay? And I'm going to grab the tip of that ear and drag it in, make the circle smaller, grab the tip, grab the middle, and just adjust the ear a little bit here to get the shape that I want this ear to have. Now, as I was saying a bit earlier about rights and wrongs, if you're creating, for example, like I am here, a creature of my own design from nothing, obviously it doesn't matter if it's not identical to what you would think an ear would look like, because obviously you're the one that knows what you're making, not everybody else. Now, as you can see, it was a very simple, easy process to make that ear. We're going to go now to the nose, okay? Now, I'll just quickly slap a human nose on here to show you how easy it is to make a human nose, okay? Just 2 strokes, one down the middle like this, like so, little stroke there, another one over the top. Hit that with your smooth a little bit. A lot of sculptors also don't bother smoothing until they've finished the model. That's personal preference, I guess, because efficiency when it comes to your workflow As like I said, if you end up over smoothing, you're just sculpting in circles. Now as you can see, we've created, I mean sure, rather basic and rather ugly, but human nose. And you can see that's how you add, just using your inverted standard brush, repetitively clicking. We can dig in the nostrils here, bring a little bit around like so. And you see, because I use a lower strength on my brush, it doesn't have a drastic effect on everything around it. So there would be a human nose. And to show you how easy it is to make a few adjustments to that nose and how you could use that, I'll just do this a little bit. And as you can see, we can bring in his bridge a bit. As you can see, I changed the brush size to suit the area that I'm trying to affect. It's important to remember your brush. Be conscious of how your brush is set, much like your symmetry, if it's on or off or so forth, because save yourself a bit of energy and time undoing. I mean, the joy of undo is that it's there to use, but I think you get the point in this. Now I'm just going to smooth that out, because as you can see, it has a very unnatural hard edge along here, right? So I'm going to run my smooth right directly over that edge a bit, and then I'm going to use my grab tool again, and I'm just going to pull that in a bit, smooth it off a bit more, and let's pull these in, shall we? Give it that slightly more natural look. Now obviously this is very basic and very quick. You can also, again, using your standard brush, I recommend, as you see, I turn my strength down. You can actually create the same sinewy effect down the nose using a delicate stroke of your brush, inverting to suck it in around the edge of the nostrils here, wherever it suits you, depending on what you're making and how it suits the model. But as you can see, we have successfully done ears and nose quite simply. Eyebrows can confuse some people. Okay, I personally have a very distinct look for this model particularly, so I'm gonna start by building up the middle here, and it's again, it goes down to the flow of the flow with the skin, and the muscle underneath it is how you decide how it's going to affect the brow and how that brow should be sculpted. Now I've got my brush set at 1.12, so as you can see, it's not very strong, but it's enough to put a ridge. So I'm going to put a whole heap of these lines here, because eventually that will be stretched skin, and I'll show you how I'll get that effect soon. And I'm gonna bring that in here, and then I'm gonna use my inverted brush a little bit over the top of this bottom corner to create a dimpling in. Now I'm gonna build this dot here and here. It creates that fold, as you can see. Now, up the middle, I'm just gonna almost mirror the effect I used on the spine with the curved outward line. However, instead of rolling down the back, I'm rolling up the forehead. Cool, I remember this one. IR Intoxicado. It's quite sharp, but we'll come to that once we get the eyes in. Now I'm going to do my lower cheekbone here, okay? To be honest, I personally quite like to start by linking that cheekbone down to where the mouth is, and then coming over the top of that subtly from the inside of the eye here. And then once we've got a bit of build there, I'm just going to smooth that for now. That out and get rid of some of that rough surface, just a little bit. As you can see, I purposely, as I said, set my smooth on quite soft. Now if I go to my standard sculpting and I turn my brush size down and make sure my strength is about right, drag this around here, just like so, okay? And this may not make a lot of sense just yet, but all shall be made clear. Let's go again, similar process, just a nice smooth stroke. You can push spacebar and trigger the steady stroke. Some people find it easier. I use it on some tools, not all, however. Now, as you can see, we've created a bit of a lip around this eye socket. For now, that gives me enough of a guidance to know where my other lines should go. So I'm going to bring these lines around and create that definition back into the face this time. Should be a little bit more permanent. And as you can see, we have an eye socket with facial structure. Now I'm going to use my grab tool and I'm going to choose right on the outside of this eyebrow here, and I'll pull this up a little bit and pull that down. Even though I'm using a bigger brush and it's sort of stretching it a little bit, once I get the bigger brush again and push that back in slightly to where I want it, to get the shape that I'm looking for, in the eye, I will add the ball to the eye socket and we'll have some eyes. Now some people say it's quite hard to make an eye socket or an eyeball, an eye socket without the ball in the eye, and it can be, it is nice, okay, to have that guidance there. But for now, I'm just going to run that along that upper eyelid again a couple times to bring that edge out a bit, because all I'm doing right now is creating the eye socket. Now I'm using my inverted brush, you see here, and I'm taking it in along that ridge. That creates that line which will eventually become the upper edge of his eyelid. Again, I'm going to run that same inverted standard brush around the bottom here, around the bottom of the eye. That'll create that same definition down the bottom. Now, to create the eyeball is very simple. You just use the Create Mesh menu and make a sphere. Once you've got the sphere, just use a scale, which is under Select and Move Tools. Scale it down and drag it into rough position. You can always adjust it more, obviously, once you've got it in place. You can also later in the model adjust it more so if you decided you wanted to deform one side of your character's face. For example, if they had a huge scar down the side of their face, or I don't know, a case of pink eye, whatever floats your boat, sinks battleships. Now, once we get that eye, a big important thing too to remember when you're doing the eye is not to make the eye too large. You might be tempted to try and make it so that it fits that hole as without any adjustment. You'd rather adjust the eye socket, honestly, than have the eye being too big, because otherwise you end up with this Google-eyed effect, and it can suit some models, or it can kill a model. Now that I've made that sphere and I got that in place, I'm just going to duplicate it by right clicking on it and click and duplicate, and I'm going to drag it over. One thing I like about ZBrush, not that this is ZBrush obviously, it's a mudBox, but one thing I like about ZBrush is that you can duplicate a subtool and use the deformation tools to automatically mirror it perfectly if it is important to you, the symmetry. Now, I generally get it pretty close, I think, but then again, I might be wrong. So I'm going to select both of those eyes, and then I'm going to go create or assign new mudBox material. And for this process, I'm just going to do something real simple that'll, basically break the eye away from the skin. Right? So once we've got that, I'm going to deselect that for now so you can see what I've actually done for the eyes. And now I'm going to lock them. Okay? Now, I don't have to do this, but I'm just doing it so that I don't accidentally screw them up. And I'm going back to my grab tool. Now, as you can see, the eye that I have here, it doesn't fit yet. So, getting my brush, and again, being conscious of the size and the area that it's deforming, I'm going to drag that eyelid to where it needs to be and where I want it to be to create my eyeball. Of course, there's no hurry. You never have to hurry any of this. I'm kind of doing it a bit because, well, I'm recording this video, but you don't really have to hurry it. You can take the time, and you'll notice that clicking in a slightly different place will affect the area completely differently. Okay, clicking on the outside will drag it by that area. If you click it by the inside, it will drag it by the inside. It's important to be conscious of where you're grabbing something, and basically, where you're dragging it for the topology factor adjusting. But as you can see, we've wrapped that fairly simply around our little creepy eyes there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom right in. I'm going to get my favorite little tool, and it's the knife tool. It's important to remember that with the knife, that by default, it doesn't subtract. It adds to the surface. As you can see, as I run it along this line, it's creating a much sharper edge. This can be used in so many ways. The knife tool can be used for wrinkles, scars, hard surfaces, eyelids, several other pieces, shall we say. I think you get the drift anyway. I mostly use it for hard surfaces, but and scars and wrinkles, etc. Now I'm going to drag that in a bit because, as far as I'm concerned, there's a bit too much of an overhang there. that in a little bit more. You can also use the grab tool in conjunction with the freeze tool to create protruding objects a lot simpler than, you know, it could be in some other circumstances. I personally prefer to build things up out of clay rather than drag them out of existing geometry. I find the more I drag the geometry out, for example, in making a horn like so, I end up with stretched textures or even mesh errors. So instead, I would personally build it up out of mesh as such. I won't do that obviously right now, but yeah. Now to the details of this eye socket. Using my knife again, and this time I'm going to hold control to invert it so it subtracts, and I'm going to cut away a little bit into this area, as you can see, just a tad, and I'm going to cut into the inside a little bit. Now I'm going to turn down the strength even more on my knife, and I'm going to carve down under the eye here a little bit, like so. And then I'm going to make it a bit bigger, and I'm going to, using its inverted form, which subtracts, run it along that bottom of that eyelid. It looks like I'm going to have to subdivide again, however, the detail just isn't coming through. So there we are, and as you can see, just by slowly doing this, I'm carving that definition in. Now I'm obviously control Zing a little bit here because I don't want the eye to show through. You can always adjust with your grab tool, but at the moment I'm just trying to be a bit simple about it, not too complicated. As you can see, we have created that basic eyelid. Now I'm using my smooth tool, but I'm staying away from that top edge of the eyelid, and I'm actually only smoothing along that one face of the eye, along here. Okay, now this will just basically subtly change the composure and topology of that geometry. Wow, try to say that 10 times fast. Anyway, see, as you can see, we've created a bit more different, you know, detail in there. Now I'm going to take this inverted standard brush and carve it up into here again a bit more. And as you can see, I'm creating a bit of detail into that eyebrow at the same time, just with using small, short, curved strokes on a soft pressure. We're going to get a bit more texture into this area. Now, something you might want to remember is that at the moment, this is not textured, this is not bump mapped. I have added no specular mapping or anything of those sorts. That's all stuff that we'll come to in probably one of my other tutorials. To start with, however, I wanted to get basically that down, and I'm not even going to do the mouth in this tutorial, to be honest. I'm just going to pretty much round that up as it is. And before I say goodbye and start on the next piece, I'm going to basically do a couple of sketches for myself just to figure out what I want to actually sculpt with the rest of it. But I will be definitely adding hard surfaces to this model. There will be metal probably along the spinal cord area, to be honest. I will probably do something down here that will be somewhat robotic-ish, and some kind of almost insertion point, I think, where the spine is going to seep into his head. I think it could be quite neat. Around here, I'll just put a basic couple of guidelines in. This is a trick you can use for yourself also, because remember, you can always subtract or add more clay to these models. It's not as if your clay supply is going to run out and dry. It's not quite like real sculpting in that sense. Every other aspect of sculpting in mudBox is very similar to sculpting in real life. Your knife can be used for everything you can imagine a knife could be used for. Your standard brush can be applied in so many different ways. We will eventually come to other parts I will cover, will be the alpha textures that you use as your brushes, the different settings and aspects of each tool. I'm not going to go through all of those right now, but as you can see, just by sculpting over and over in nice lines, you can create a bit of a basic composition and sinew effect. Now that will come more into play later once I use my knife tool, like so, as a small demonstration. Right, as you see, that's on standard, it applies. Now on inverted, it subtracts. So as I cut away down here, and then I go over that very softly with my smooth, it creates a very what would you call it, natural kind of crease in the skin. You can also, for the record, pinch these areas. For example, to run the pinch along the eyelid here, I generally, to be honest, in mudBox mostly use the pinch for hard surfaces, but I'm just gonna add a little bit more geometry in there, and then I'm gonna run a pinch tool along here to demonstrate how you can use this. Now, all it does is pulls the edges together, so it does a very similar thing to what the effect you get from the knife, but it doesn't add or subtract clay. It only affects the crease that's there already. Okay, so if you place the pinch tool over a flat piece of mesh where there is no line, nothing happens. As you can see, it does nothing. But if you approach that over an area, say here, where we have a bit more work, it pulls it in. And you can use this in many ways, obviously, because you can create that natural wrinkle effect quite easily without having to sculpt it all in, just by pinching over your sinew buildup, instead of having to go through and change tools and specifically carve it out using your knife or whatever. You can just pinch the work that you've built up, and that is why I prefer to build my model up gradually, because you end up saving yourself a bit of effort in the long run. So as you can see, we've got a bit of work to go, but all in all, I'm hoping that this was somewhat helpful. I might as well do this, right? Okay. Let's put a bit of a mouth in here. Nice and simple. Okay, the easiest way to build a mouth. Put a line across, like so. It's far too strong. Like so. For this model, I will probably build some parts that I will import and add to this, and then sculpt those parts to save a bit of time, because it's not a time-lapse video. Then we go another line across the top here, right, to create our top lip. Now I'm going to smooth that out a bit, because in the end I'm going to put some nice big chompers coming up out of that bottom lip, I think, which will be an interesting demonstration of how to extrude a surface quite simply. Now, using my grab, I'm going to pull that top lip back for now. Okay, I'm going to see how I've got this white dot on the inside edge of that last sculpting. I'm going to pull that forward. Okay, and then I'm going to get my bigger brush, and I'm going to get the middle of the lip and pull that out. Then I'm going to pull it out and up, pull this like so. And it all depends, like I said earlier, on where your grab tool is centered. Now, using my default sculpting brush, no stamp image again, I'm just gonna invert it, holding control, and I'm gonna suck out the inside of that mouth a little bit. Okay, when it comes to ambient oscillation and shadow oscillation, that will become darker once I activate those, just to show you, but we'll get to that later. Now I'm going to use the freezing technique for doing this, purely for the purpose of showing you how. Okay, so first thing we do is we're going to freeze all around here. Okay, nice and simple, like, let's just cover that in frozen blue. Oh look, if I do it right, hold on, let me go on. I don't know if you ever played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic online. Just a side thought. I think I just kind of found old Chris. Anyway, enough of that crap. Onto the point. Let's size down our brush. Now, holding the control key, I'm going to unfreeze a few little portions along the inside of that lip. Okay, and then I get my grab, and I'm going to make the brush nice and solid and big. I'm going to pull those up like so. And yes, it was that easy to create those orcish chompers. Now, obviously, symmetrical teeth of this sort, yeah, no, but we'll come to that part of it later in the build. Now, as you can see, they're quite basic. If we step right down they no longer, none of this stuff exists. This is the model at its lowest LOD. Let's step it up. You see that just appeared. At level 2, they're there. And at level 3 and 4, it's starting to get a bit more detail in. So we'll go back up to 4 for now. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that knife brush again, okay, and I'll size it right down, and I'm gonna hold control and I'm gonna run that using the steady stroke turned on along the inside of that lip. As you can see, it's a little bit rough and all. That's telling me that even at this highest level of detail, I'm sort of pushing it a little bit. That at my highest subdivision, it's still a bit low at the moment for how far we've come with the detail I'm trying to sculpt in now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pinch the very tips of these teeth. Up the edge of these teeth, and that will create, and just by running that back and forward like that, we'll get that more razor-like edge on the side of the teeth. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time and energy doing all this at this very second. I will finish these off in the next part of this tutorial. As you can see, we're just getting the basic tooth shape in and moving the lip around the tooth so that it will have that natural and realistic composition in the end. Now, by grabbing under the lip and pushing up like so, and sizing the brush correctly, you can drag the lip over a bit more. And this is where our next tool comes in. Once we've got this to where we want it, and we've got the teeth roughly where we want them, and we get the lip on the top lip into the sort of dimpled shape that it would have if it was being interfered with by these teeth. We're going to use the bulge tool, which is very much basically just inflation, like a balloon. And I'm going to make sure that the strength is not set that high, for one. Just run that along here a little bit, like so. Okay. Smoothing it out as I go, because I'm gonna try and avoid getting too much creasing going on in the lip. I obviously want a little bit in the bottom lip and a bit more in the top lip, obviously. That might not make sense. It might not be obvious, actually, when I think about it. But if something is torn or tight, it doesn't so much crease, it stretches. The creasing is more when it's folded onto itself. It's a slight little difference that you will learn as you grow in sculpting. Now, pulling this lip down a bit again, because I'm trying to get the shape of this mouth in here now. The shape that I really want. That reminds me of a flatmate that me and my wife had once. She used to walk around and her lip was dragging on the floor all the time. Made me want to pull the emo songs out, you know? But enough of that. Let's push that in a bit. And here we go. As you can see, we have basically facial structure, ready to go. In the next session, I think I will do the spine as a whole sitting. For now, just to give you something to think on and have a look at, we're going to go cavity oscillation. As you can see, it adds the black creasing lines. Now some of this is obviously wrong here and here because of these sideways strokes. Like I was saying earlier, if you build something with sideways strokes, once you add cavity and so forth on, you'll be able to tell, and it won't have that real natural wrinkled cavity, look. So let's come back and let's add ambient oscillation so you can see the whole thing. And I'm going to add some lights here just to make it all pretty. And we'll use something, I think I'm going to use something slightly glossier just for now. Give it that human-y look. And here we go. As you can see, we're well on the way to creating a character. I hope this basic tutorial on the simple brush tools and mudBox's, well, more basic usage was of some sort of help to you. If not, well, sorry about it. I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna make some parts, and I'll make the rest of this tutorial up, and we'll do the spinal cord next. So keep a lookout for part 2. Thanks for watching, and all that jazz.